Ever wondered how a tiny loophole in a web application could compromise the security of millions of users? Picture this, a small, seemingly harmless flaw known as an insecure direct object reference, or IDOR, which has the potential to become a massive security breach. This vulnerability can expose sensitive information, putting countless users at risk. It's like a tiny crack in a dam that, under the right circumstances, can cause a catastrophic flood. In the next few minutes, let's decipher the mystery of IDOR together. Diving straight in, IDOR, or Insecure Direct Object References, is a term that might sound complex but is quite simple to understand. Let's break down the term, shall we? An object reference is like a pointer. It's a way for a web application to identify and interact with a specific object, such as a file, a database entry, or even a user account. Now, these references are direct because they allow for direct access to these objects without any additional layers of abstraction. When these direct object references are insecure, that's when we're dealing with IDOR. This insecurity occurs when a web application exposes a reference to an internal implementation object like a file, a database record, or a user's data without any proper security checks in place. Let's use an analogy to paint a clearer picture. Imagine a library. Each book has a unique identification number. A well-secured library would require you to present a valid library card before you can borrow a book. But in an insecure system, you could just walk in, tell them the book's identification number, and walk out with a book without having to prove your identity or your borrowing rights. That's exactly how IDOR works in the digital world. Attackers can exploit this vulnerability by manipulating these references. They can try different reference values, and if the application doesn't properly verify the user's permissions, they can gain unauthorized access to data. It's a bit like guessing the combination of a lock. If there's no one checking if you're the owner of the lock, you can keep trying until you hit the right combination. This might not sound like a big deal, but it can lead to serious breaches. Attackers could potentially gain access to sensitive information, modify data, or perform actions on behalf of other users, all without their knowledge or consent. Simply put, IDOR is like leaving your house keys under the doormat, hoping that no one will find them. It's an open invitation for trouble. And in the digital world, you can't always count on the goodwill of strangers. To understand the gravity of IDOR, it's crucial to see it in action. Let's imagine a hypothetical scenario, an online bookstore, if you will. You log in and you're greeted with a personalized dashboard showing your recent purchases. You click on one of your purchases to view the receipt, and you notice the URL changes to something like bookstore.com/receipts/12345. Quote dot here, 12345 is a unique identifier for your receipt. Now, let's put on our black hats and think like an attacker. You notice the pattern in the URL and wonder what happens if you change that number. You try bookstore.com/receipts/12346 quote, comma, and voila, you're now viewing someone else's receipt, complete with their name, address, and what they've bought. This is a prime example of an insecure direct object reference, or IDOR. The attacker could potentially automate this process, changing the numbers sequentially and harvesting a wealth of data they're not supposed to have access to. They could even manipulate parameters within the request body of a post or a PuTTY request, potentially gaining access to modify or delete data. This might seem like a simple trick, but its simplicity is precisely what makes it so dangerous. It requires no special tools, no deep technical knowledge, just a keen eye and a willingness to exploit the system. In our bookstore scenario, the attacker has just violated the privacy of countless individuals, all by changing a number in the URL. Even more concerning is that this is not limited to viewing receipts. Any resource that uses a reference to an internal implementation object, like a file, a database key, or a directory, could be potentially vulnerable to IDOR if it's not properly secured. As you can see, exploiting IDOR can be as simple as changing a number in a URL. The impact, however, can be devastating, leading to unauthorized access to sensitive data and even potential data manipulation or deletion. The consequences of IDOR can be disastrous, leading to severe breaches of privacy and security. Picture a scenario where a cybercriminal gains unauthorized access to sensitive information. This could range from personal data such as social security numbers and bank account details to corporate data like trade secrets and intellectual property. But the damage doesn't end there. IDOR can also enable data manipulation, allowing hackers to alter or delete information, which could lead to significant operational disruptions or even financial losses. And let's not forget the potential legal consequences. In an era where data protection regulations are increasingly stringent, a company compromised by an IDR attack could face hefty fines, not to mention the loss of trust from customers and stakeholders. In essence, the aftermath of an IDOR vulnerability is not just a technical issue, but a serious business risk that can have far-reaching effects on a company's reputation and bottom line. The fallout from an IDOR exploit can be a nightmare to any company. While IDOR can have serious consequences, there are effective ways to protect against it. Let's delve into the world of mitigation strategies. First up, let's talk about using indirect object references. This means replacing direct object references like a user's ID with an indirect one, such as a temporary token. By doing so, you can confuse potential attackers and make it harder for them to guess the references. Next, implementing proper access control checks is of paramount importance. This means that every time a user tries to access an object, the system should verify whether that user has the correct permissions. Remember, assumptions are the enemy. Don't just assume that because a user is logged in, they have the right to access everything. Be meticulous and thorough. Finally, we must not overlook the importance of regular security testing. This can help you identify vulnerabilities before they're exploited. Consider investing in automated testing tools and threat modeling to stay one step ahead of potential attackers. Of course, there's no one-size-fits-all solution. Each application is unique and will require a tailored approach. However, these strategies form the backbone of a robust defense against IDOR. Remember, cybersecurity isn't just about responding to attacks. It's about anticipating them, preparing for them, and preventing them from happening in the first place. In cybersecurity, the best offense is a good defense, and understanding IDOR is a significant step in building that defense.